All right, we're going to react to somebody that I've never reacted to before, but I do want to preface this with something. If you guys like Week in Review was literally built and inspired incredibly heavily by this man's channel and specifically his WoW news. I have never played WoW, but I would watch his WoW news videos all the time. And yeah, I was just incredibly inspired by his content as I started. And this is Bellular Gaming, and he posted a video about Star Citizen. I didn't know he was a big Star Citizen backer, actually. And he said the title is Star Citizen has had no other option. Staff leaks to press. So this is you guys have linked me some other guy who makes like a website that does leaking and stuff. And I think this was, I didn't know if it was legit or not and whatever. So I guess this legitimizes it for me a little bit more.
Sponsored by Squarespace.
So
18 days. That is how long Cloud Imperium Games demanded their staff crunch to create a pristine demo of Squadron 42. Now, Squadron 42 is the episodic single-player game, basically a AAA game based in the Star Citizen universe, made using all the Star Citizen tech. It's got full FPS, EVA stuff, you can walk around the big capital ships, and it has proper cinematic ambitions, which means big actors. You've got Mark Hamill, Gillian Anderson, Mark Strong, Andy Serkis, Liam Cunningham, John Rhys-Davies, big names, and a level of production value and attention to detail that befits all of that. Now, of course, there were crashes, not all was well, and when we examine the overall story, one thing's clear. Chris Roberts, the man in charge, has got the many traits of a typical visionary. Now, it's a vision that I even backed a decade ago. It's his dream game, it's also kind of my dream game, that's why I backed it.
I mean, the whole idea of Star Citizen being everyone's dream game is because it has been basically said that it will be everything. So without it capable of being everything. So the idea here is it's all been a dream the entire time and it's never been a reality, which is why it's everyone's dream game. And I think people are very quickly realizing after this year's CitizenCon that their dreams either just turned to nightmares or whatever. Is a lot of people, this game was never going to work for everyone, and people are starting to realize that, right?
But the pathway to here has been bumpy. Deadlines have been missed, monetization has got very controversial, and
yeah.
now, it looks like their yearly earnings have somewhat plateaued. We actually know the Cloud Imperium Games' burn rate, that's how much money they spend every month. We know it's massive, and with this all being timed for CitizenCon, it seems that they needed a win, something to instill confidence and to bring in fresh blood. Fresh blood, of course, at the cost of 18 days of back-to-back crunch, which has a tinge of desperation, but to get a demo, to get a 90-minute YouTube video so good that people would have to pay attention. I can't deny.
Excuse me. This is interesting because I don't think it was just for the demo. They were doing so many things at one time. So Bellular may not be like in the know completely here and is a little laser focused on the Squadron 42 demo. I don't know if the entire staff was asked to work that many days in a row because it was just to polish this. They were also doing the testing of 4.0. They were also stabilizing their live build. There were, what, 4 development branches going on at the same time that were actively with either the CitizenCon stuff or us that were actively playing it. So, like, you had a live, a PTU, and a test preview all at the same time. You had this stuff being worked on as well. It was more than just this. It was way more than just this. There was a lot going on. But the reason for all that is this is their funding drive for the year, right?
How impressive that demo is. We see sprawling capital ships that you can explore, first-person combat, battles that feel intense. And I do say this stuff as a backer from back in the day. I've regularly played the Persistent universe. I've done...
I find it so cool that people that I never thought knew anything about Star Citizen actually know, like, he knows a lot about it so far. I'm 1 minute into the video. I'm so excited for this one. I haven't been this excited for a React in a long time. I'm fanboying a little bit right now.
The space battles, I've done
like Bellular a lot,
but seeing it all brought together with this level of production value and the framing of a single-player story is quite incredible. It's compelling. Between the world building, the capital ship exploration, the massive space battle finale, you can see the ambition that's here, and you can contrast that with some of Roberts' most early work, the Wing Commander franchise. And the funny thing is, you see, the ambition is essentially the same thing. What's changed is tools, technology, and production value. Now, all of this arrives a year after being declared feature complete. And I know a lot of people will read that and think, well, that's obviously a lie. It couldn't be feature complete. Well, there could be some features that aren't, but actually, one of the biggest problems with AAA is that polish and bug fixes are treated as the last stretch, as an afterthought. But in reality, they are what make a game a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. If you're wondering where the next Hollow Knight...
That's so true. That's so true, right? Like, a lot of people said Cyberpunk was... Like, I remember specifically Burks saying this. Burks was like, Cyberpunk was a really, really good game, even on launch, because he was just used to the trash that is Star Citizen and its lack of polish. So going to a game that had bugs, had problems, but maybe not as many as Star Citizen, he can still kind of see that the game was really good, whereas your average gaming audience couldn't. Squadron 42 has to be a 9 or a 10. It has to be. And I imagine he's going to get to it. I don't know what some of the chapters are called. Cost of Perfection, Cracks in the Foundation, Visions versus Reality, Scope Creep, Money Problems. Yeah, I think he's going to get to it based on some of these titles, so I'll let him speak, but I'm just going to say it has to be a 9 or a 10. It has to be. If it's not, we're in trouble.
Yeah, it's because they take this part seriously. So I don't deny that they've been working, I expect that they have been. But that of course doesn't help their problem with trust. Now, Chris Roberts himself took the stage, of course, after the crashes. He joked about how the demo gods brought their wrath before dropping the date. 2026. Another 2 years minimum, which, hey, to me that's fine. I'm happy to wait for a good game. But he did...
Okay, that's cool. But again, the air came out of the room. Because they already kind of did this demo last year. So people were kind of vibes in 2023, probably 2 years after feature complete. Bellular's a game developer as well. He kind of knows a little bit more about this, where somebody like myself was like, all right, feature complete 2 years from now. I could totally see this being ready to go. It was not, right? And then, yeah, like somebody in chat right now is saying, sorry, I'm just saying somebody because I have no idea how to pronounce your name. I don't think they can afford 2 years more of this. Maybe not. We'll see. I don't know exactly what their financial situation is. We have seen an incredible ramp up in ship sales. There have been more ship sales than ever this year, and they're making the same amount of money. He had mentioned plateauing or something like that. There's a Montoya video that we're going to watch next that says that the thumbnail is literally saying, you know, making less money or something like that. So like highlighting that there's a problem here. And I've been saying this for years. They never prioritized the Star Citizen experience being good to where the game could sell you on itself. They had to always sell the ships. And they've made that a priority. And instead of eating the costs when they had less cost, now they're in a place where I don't know if they can come back from it.
He did assure people that Squadron 42 has been more stable these last few weeks. Those are rather pivotal few weeks. A pivotal few weeks in which a lot of people reached out to the press, and that means we've got plenty to talk about. October 1st, 2024, a company-wide memo drops, and the requirements are rather staggering. Number one, a little bit less crazy, is that staff must be in office Friday, October 4th and 11th. Those are typically work-from-home days. Where things change, though, is Saturdays, October 5th and 12th, are now mandatory office workdays. Yes, a 6-day work week, that's a little bit more spicy. Where things change though is Sundays. They also became workdays. October 6th and 13th.
Just a 7-day work week, no big deal.
13th would be mandatory workdays for the team, but staff were only encouraged to take those days in the office. They could work from home. It's just as it was in Genesis. And on the 7th day, God was really far behind schedule, but ordered himself a cheeky Nando's to his home office. Now, in that original memo, staff were told they would get the time back later. They were told that there would be breakfast and lunch provided, but where it gets a little bit more interesting is that 11 minutes after journalists contacted Cloud Imperium Games about this, asking a few questions, staff suddenly found out that they were also getting a paid holiday scheduled after CitizenCon.
All right, so that's the interesting part, is the moment it was leaked, CIG reacted to it and was like, by the way, you're getting the time off, is allegedly what happened. So, okay. Classic CIG. At the moment they get caught, they're like, oh, no, we're actually good people.
Almost as if, from a managerial perspective, they kind of clocked on to just how bad this looks. And in situations like this, it's worth thinking, is this malice or is this a management problem, a time management?
It has always been a management problem.
A schedule problem. You see, everybody knows that extreme crunch like this is borrowing money from tomorrow, but at a ludicrous interest rate. You burn people out. So when it does happen anyway, we can deduce that the people who made the call did not feel that they had any more option. To them, it wasn't just bugs worth fixing because that would be nice for the demo. No, you only make a large, controversial call like this that will tank morale at your company if you really feel like you need to make it. And based on...
Wow, that is such an interesting take that I never thought of or thought about. And it probably comes from his game development background and his understanding of, you know, managing employees and things like that. That's really interesting. Is that because it does feel like they have no other option. That it has to be good. It has to sell. And they're willing to sacrifice, because if it, the way they've been going, it's clear that they're burning, right? It's expensive, and the staff costs and all that stuff, and we're buying less ships. We're buying less ships, and this isn't a hindsight is 2020 situation. I've been saying this for 7 years. The game has to sell itself. And when you constantly punish your players and then expect them to be hyped and want to buy the next ship that you're just going to get scammed by, like, because the game's not good enough, it's weighing on people. And then the last 2 years, we've saw them spend an insane amount of time, money, and effort to find new money. Go to Asia, YouTube videos, that kind of YouTube ads, all that's like just trying to find new backers to get hooked on the FOMO or whatever marketing tools they use. Hey, just buy an Aurora. That's all you need. And then you get in game and you're like, well, I can't mine with an Aurora. Oh, bounty hunting gets a little hard at a certain point with an Aurora. Maybe I should get a Prospector and a Cutlass as well. And now all of a sudden we're $200-300 in instead of just $45, right? That was their focus the last couple of years. Then 318 happened. Then 323 happened, right? And they just never delivered that experience to the players in their multiplayer game that would support more ship sales. The more you make the game, the more the game has to sell itself. And it's not selling itself right now. And they never put priority on that. It's happening right now in this moment, people. In this moment, we have a 324.2 that is live, that is completely unplayable and doesn't work and has been hotfixed 300 times. until the point where they can't hotfix it anymore. So now they're doing 324.3 to get ready for the next ship sale. Both of those patches certainly have a release date already, and those release dates are specifically to sell spaceships, not to make a better game, not for the player experience specifically to be improved. There's improvements in both, but they come out at a time where the live experience suffers because it has to come out at a time for a specific ship sale. They had to sell the Zeus before they went to CitizenCon. Why? Because they had the Freelancer or the Misk Star Lancer or whatever, right? And they didn't want the Zeus to cannibalize Star Lancer sales. So they had to sell that first. It's very obvious. It's so blatantly obvious. This isn't inside info. This is just using my pea brain to figure this stuff out. It's very clear. We got to get this patch out and do this sale before we do that sale. Otherwise, people won't buy that, you know. And then if you put everything at us at one time, you're only going to buy one thing when you could maybe buy two. So that's been always that idea, I think. And that's what's happening now. We got to get 324.3 ready for IAE, and IAE has a specific date. So no matter the state of 324.3, like what happened with 324.2, whatever the state it's in, it's going to come. And it doesn't matter. It's going to come out. And that's it.
And some things we've learned about the state of the company, that does kind of make sense. And look, at the worst of times, we've all been through cycles of work a bit like that. They suck, and you can avoid them with a good solution like today's sponsor, who let you get from idea to
oh, nice.
done fast and with no bugs.
But just before we go to this, I think his take is super balanced. And it's just pure logic, no emotion, nothing. Just balance and his experience, and it works.
Squarespace, and whenever I needed a job site and a game landing page, I went to them because Squarespace makes getting the job done simple, fast, and cross-device, all looking fantastic, especially with their new Blueprint AI. It essentially guides you through making your own custom Squarespace template. They make sure that your different fonts are all paired correctly, that your colors are nice and harmonious, which means you don't have to be a designer to actually have a stunning looking site. Then you can customize all the details with their block-based editor that makes everything simple, and if you want real granular fine control, Fluid Engine lets you do just that, but without introducing bugs and making your site not work on mobile. It's quite amazing. And this stuff matters because a good first impression seriously helps on the web, be that just...
You've never seen me sim so hard it's cute? I've never seen anybody have a reasonable take about Star Citizen before. Usually it's polarized.
Hosting your portfolio, your personal site, or of course, if you're doing business where they've got you covered. E-commerce for digital products, for physical products, they'll hook up with your shipping provider. They support courses if you're selling educational products. Bookings, maybe you're doing in person or online. They have all of that, and wrapped up with Squarespace payments to make it even simpler for you and to give your customers more options. They handle all the fiddly stuff so you can focus on what makes your offering to the world unique. You can go to squarespace.com/BellyOtherNews to build your site with a free trial, which you should do anyway because it's just fun to make something, and then you can send it live with 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain.
Skip it, you know you wanna. If I'm reacting to somebody's video, it would be insane to not react to the ad. I have no intentions of ever skipping anything.
Press report recently dropped from Insider Gaming, and it reveals a darker context to this stuff. 100 to 150 staff gone in February 2024, primarily from their Austin and LA offices. Now, according to their sources, the severance packages that people were offered came with strings. You had to sign an NDA. If you don't sign the NDA, you do.
Which prevents them from announcing their departure on social media. Those who refused to sign were told they would not get any form of severance. Interesting.
Not get your severance package. And I suppose if...
Yeah, like, this website, Insider Gaming, I'm very skeptical of. But, yeah.
If you're wondering why we didn't really get that much information at the time, well, that would probably be why.
Is that standard? Okay.
You must ask yourself, why would they do that NDA? And specifically, why would they do it in their situation? They're not a regular...
He's a known leaker? Yeah, but if his information isn't like absolute trash like some has been in the past, is it really that bad?
AAA publisher where everybody just expects bad things will happen. They're a community-backed game, a ludicrously community-backed game. So any bad stories that employees do choose to share with that community, well, those will feel like a personal betrayal. And it is.
Yes, that's how the community feels. That's how I feel at times, right? You give them money, they say they're going to do something, then they don't do it. And I don't know what he's going into here.
It's
I don't
that
know
use
what
of
this is.
backers' money that makes other things a little more curious. Enter Manchester. Nice old city, but it's got Cloud Imperium Games' big new office, and it's a monument to success. As a science fiction fan, holy shit, please. Custom paneling, the massive statues, custom cafe,
spending money on the
canteen,
office.
a cafe with baristas. One staff member sarcastically said to Insider Gaming, but at least we have baristas serving us coffee here. Lovely. Now, usually this kind of office decoration is fine, you know, it sets a tone, it builds a culture, it's impressive. Valve's office has a valve in it. Perhaps even the Valve. There's the Luden statue in Kojima's office and countless others, but there's a core
Yeah, but those studios have shipped an actual game.
difference. Very often those studios are using their own money that they've generated from products that they've sold, and that is different to backing something either on Kickstarter or directly. Now, of course, the argument that a good, inspiring office is going to be good for your team holds water. That does make
Yes, and that's the idea behind this. There's also some, like, they're in the UK because of tax breaks. I've heard stories that, like, all of this stuff was done for tax breaks. I don't know if I buy it or not. It doesn't really matter to me personally. But, yeah, when I see stuff like this, I just see... I see the money that should have went to development, but who's going to work in a musty basement that has nothing on the walls and, isn't a pleasing office to work in. So I don't really see too much of a problem with this. You know what I mean?
Makes sense. You want
like what do you want them just be in an empty warehouse with a bunch of computers next to it? It just doesn't work like that, right? The barista and all that stuff, maybe a little over the top. Again, I have some experience with this. My brother works at a very, 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 very large, well-known software company, and they had a really nice office. It attracts talent. It's really nice to go to work in a really nice office.
If the office coffee isn't total shite, that's great. But it's a question of balance and value, even though this is Cloud Imperium Games' money. That's the thing. It is their money. To backers,
it's not your money anymore.
It's general revenue. And this opens them up to a new criticism where the community will look at every custom wall panel or extremely cool sci-fi looking door and
you know what? We can look at that, but once we give up our money to them, they could do whatever they want with it. They could do whatever they want with it. But they also need to listen to the criticisms that we have, right? They also have to listen to the criticisms of, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to do this. This is not something that had to be done. Like most things in your game, the people who work at this office won't even recognize or notice how cool this is after a little while. Like they went over the top on things. You can have a nice office. I think if you look at the German office is like way chilled out in comparison to this.
Think, why is that not going into the game? This feels like a betrayal. I'm obviously not saying that we need to lock the developers in a bare hangar with no heating.
Did you need to do this? No, you didn't need to do this either. This is ridiculous.
Your money invested in good working conditions will see return on investment. The problem here is luxury excess. And
you can't even look out that window anymore.
That is what's rubbing backers and staff the wrong way, especially when that is being built during a hiring freeze.
Blizzard does the same. Blizzard has shipped countless successful video games and does not take development money and spend it on this. CIG thinks they're Blizzard, but CIG has not done what they need to do to deserve Blizzard's success. Right? But they act like they are. They think they are, but they're not.
mid-layoffs. Generally speaking, most companies are set up to not allow this sort
Overwatch 2 wasn't successful. Warcraft, Diablo, World of Warcraft, like, why are I can't with some of you people? Like,
there
you guys
are
are so
chains
dumb.
of accountability, a chain of command, a board who can fire
StarCraft.
you if you make a big mistake. Here, though, there's Chris Roberts, whose name drew in millions of crowdfunding 12 years ago, and his name certainly helped to draw me in. As an example, Freelancer, one of the last games he worked on before he did a stint in the film industry, well, it's rough around the edges, but it's got a special place in my heart. And there's another factor you will not know about unless you were there at the time. 2012 was a different gaming industry. Now, it was the gaming industry. Yes, we were angry at things. We were thinking about what EA did to Mass Effect 3, why they mandated it to be shut out in basically 2 years. Slightly up.
I was so upset with Mass Effect 3. Oh my god.
Every game came with a pre-installed grey, brown, yellow piss filter that made them all look the same and bad, and PCs were genuinely struggling against consoles, and we were lucky to even get a decent port. It was the perfect time for Star Citizen's message of a true, ambitious vision that was entirely pro-PC gaming. But of course, with visions come visionaries, and they can be interesting to work with and interesting to manage projects. Staff paint quite the picture. Here's a quote: "I've genuinely been sat in meetings that got derailed for 30 minutes so that the placement of objects that players are likely never to interact with could be discussed in detail. There's just no actual focus on getting the game done."
Dude, that is so definitely a thing that has happened. That is when there are what percentage would you give on the things that are in the world? How many of them are interactable? There's been so many placed objects, nearly none of them are interactable. That has to be true.
Attention to detail cuts both ways. Iteration is normally a good thing. Normally. A source said this to Insider Gaming: "Sometimes the most basic features can be reviewed by him half a dozen times for it then to be scrapped or changed on the 7th review."
Definitely true as well.
The staff detailed deep problems. A custom game engine described as a Frankenstein, a sort of constantly mutating thing full of custom solution after custom solution, which means that if you're an experienced staff member, you're holding the whole thing together. If you're new, it's really hard to get started. And the problem, the impression is that experienced staff cannot make a proper impact at the company. So they just leave. Newer staff then join, but because they're newer, they cannot recognize problems soon enough, and they end.
I get the vibe that that shift is now changing. I'm noticing that people like Zach and other directors at the company, directors are like, is Luke was, I think he still is Elliot now one? I'm not sure, but there's people that are getting higher up and they're able to make their own decisions. It seems like this is just, I'm not coping. This is like you could see it. They come to the chat and they just say what they're doing. And it doesn't seem like Chris has his filthy little fingers on everything. I think you could, if you really look. Yeah, Benoit coming around. You see all of a sudden Rich Tyra comes in and you notice that the game is really shifted in their direction of where they want to go with it and stuff like that. I get the vibe that Chris is stepping off, even if it's just a tiny bit, to give them a little bit more freedom to be developers and not have to be artists all the time. So we'll see. But I feel like we're starting to see that a little bit. But I think that's really good insight of if an engine's really hard to work in, it's really hard for people to come in, especially if it's super custom like theirs. It's really hard for people to come in and make an impact. And it's really hard for people that have been there forever to make an impact if guys like Chris are, you know, like this. I feel like that has changed a little bit lately. I don't know how much. And will it make an impact enough to make Star Citizen happen or be good? Who knows? But this year and a bit of last year feels like that vibe is starting to change a little bit. 18 days work, slave session in a row, Atlas microtransaction directors leaving. How is this changing? I mean from the ideas. Would there have ever been a Sandworm raid 3 years ago? Would they have ever let what was shown at CitizenCon happen 3 years ago? No chance. You know what I mean? Would there ever have been crafting in the way that they explained it 3 years ago? No chance. You're saying yes. You're the ones coping. It would have happened if it was capable of happening. It would have happened if they would have left it happen. If they would have left it happening. Right? Would the word instance have ever been uttered? No, because somebody's finally listening to the game developers at the company and not the visionary. Right? Money causes change? No, I think they finally hit the wall of Chris Roberts' vision is not something that can become a reality. There are restrictions in this world of game development, and he had to start listening to the people who were telling him this isn't possible. We have to do it a different way. And those are the people like Rich Tyrer. Those are the people like maybe a Zach or an Elliot or a Luke or whoever, right? We only know the people that stop by here, but it had to happen at some point. Otherwise, nothing was ever going to happen.
Up in a strange position where they've been there for a while, they think they're still going to ship a game, it's not went how they wanted, but they also can't afford to have so much of their career, of their CV spent at a company without shipping a game.
I've literally heard, like, I almost know who leaked, because I've literally heard a specific developer who left say this to me exactly that, is if you're going to move up in game development, the only way is to ship projects, apparently. And if, shipping a patch for Star Citizen is not shipping a project. So it makes it really hard for them to move up in the way that they want to. So the only way to move up is to leave.
To quote directly from Insider Gaming, it's created an unhealthy place to work. You can't push back on anything, one current developer admitted. They are repeating mistakes that other companies made 20 years ago, which contributes to the shortcomings of their ambitious features.
I can see that.
It absolutely stands to reason. It absolutely makes sense. And some of that makes sense because Chris Roberts left the industry after he left Digital Anvil and wasn't involved in Freelancer. He was producing movies. He then came back to the games industry. But in that decade's sabbatical, the industry changed a lot. It seems a lot of those lessons he did not pick up on. I
mean, even the industry changed a lot from a passion project industry to this pure profit, machine that just doesn't make good games anymore, right?
Get to the money, but the money only makes sense with this, the sheer ambition, because you see, the unique funding model removes something that usually enforces discipline. Just look at the progress.
It enforces discipline, but I don't think people want discipline anymore. I think they're tired of COD and FIFA and just pushing out the same game with a different skin on it every year. I do think people want something special. Now, there are games that have been made that are special, right? And they didn't have to go as insane as Chris did here. Chris went insane in scope and insane in scale and has not stopped. Right? There's been amazing games. I'm sure you guys can call them out, right? Chris went too far. And the only way to reel this in, I think, is to literally reel it in a little bit and take it back a step. And I think that's kind of what they're doing.
They've made. If you compare to 2015 trailers, you can see massive improvements in almost every aspect of the game. I mean, in particular, they've got a cool new custom solution that allows the game to cluster points of interest on a planet and allows for multiple biomes to blend together for people. They talked about the 1.0 version of the persistent universe. That's basically the MMO, with its endgame content, its player organizations, confirmation of the 5-star systems it would ship with. And if you want to hear about insurance and taxation in the persistent universe, that's part of a big speech at CitizenCon. And if you're somebody like me, That's great. You almost want that second life as some sort of space cowboy. But the reality is it's overshot almost every single self-set deadline. You've heard some of why from Insider Gaming today. Others include how they handle FPS literally rather than use the industry standard
but I probably won't use
first and third person cameras. How scope has exploded. And it's the ambition, scope creep, combined with management failures, a lack of discipline, and the wrong kind of pressure. And that's where money enters the picture. This chart is Star Citizen's revenue. You can see from 2014 to 2018 there is limited growth, but then it exploded. The line went up. And some of that is what we could call business model innovations, but a lot of it is playability, especially things like persistence in the universe. You can log in and do some mining, do some missions, PvP, exploring, all sorts of things actually. There's now persistence in what you own, where things are placed, there's progression. And with all of that...
Does he have a special build? What game is he playing? Does he have some special press build? I mean, there is very loose progression. I wonder what his, like, okay. I wonder what his package is. And if you don't play a lot, you can feel a sense of progression, but it dies down very quickly. Right? So, like, if you start with an Aurora, you start with a starter ship, you will feel the sense of progression when you get a mining ship. You will feel the sense of progression, especially now with cargo hauling missions, if you get a bigger cargo hold. Right? So it is there. But, like, this guy plays MMOs. It's not there like that. You know what I mean? So he's probably playing the game a bit as a tourist, would be my guess. He has a 300i as far as you're aware. So that would give you a sense of progression if every time it wipes, you start out with the 300i and you're like, ooh, I want to earn myself a salvage ship. But again, the way they've gone about it is this is my personal thing, is if you're starting out with a starter ship or one of these ships that doesn't do a whole lot but shoot its guns, it does get very repetitive in order to get yourself into that more specialized ship, like a mining ship, a salvage ship, and so on. It does get a little rough. So, yeah. He's talking relative to the pre-2018 days. Yeah, I mean, there's more progression in the game than then, but I think that's where the game lacks the most and where they could have developed easily while waiting for the game to progress on the tech side, is they could have dialed in some of these progression systems many, many years ago. That's always been my criticism of the game, and they never prioritized it. They always prioritized visuals, ship sales, ship visuals, and all those other things way over giving the developers time to create a fun and meaningful progression system in the game. And now we have the 1.0 version of that. And they have still not done anything related to reputation or anything like that. And I don't know when we'll see it. I think we'll I mean, maybe the reason they didn't do it is because they need that mission refactor for 4.0, and they needed to know the framework of server meshing tech before they can do the mission refactor for 4.0. I don't think you could just do the mission refactor for 4.0 without knowing what 4.0 would look like, you know?
Pledge revenue surging from 37 million to 114 million by 2022 is no surprise. But then, from 2022 to 2023, it was 117 million. That is a $3 million increase. That's a small increase.
Yeah.
And if you look at the 2024 numbers, they do appear to be rather flat, if even a little bit down. Now, if you're like...
I would call them down. The only reason that they went up is because they took the pay-to-win level to an insane level in comparison to they've ever done before, right?
like Chris Roberts and you're prone to scope creep and missed deadlines, one thing that will keep you on track is clear consequences. Say a publisher having a deadline.
October year-on-year is terrible. That's interesting. That's cute. Wow, that blue mark there that's really big. F8C, exactly. So if you're talking about every other year, you'd be right. Yeah, 45% fewer accounts this year than last year. It's not okay. We're not in a good situation.
Chris Roberts and you're prone to scope creep and missed deadlines, one thing that will keep you on track is clear consequences. Say a publisher having a deadline. And so here money is both a blessing and a curse. It enables the best and worst tendencies of the visionary. Where sure, you may blow past your deadlines and actually piss people off, but where a publisher would pull the plug, they had ever-increasing revenue. And in fairness to them, much of that revenue is based on the actual fruits of their labor. They were just a little bit late. And so in this, we see the single...
I wouldn't say it's the fruits of their labor. I mean, it is. It's the fruits of the ship team's labor. But there are other teams at this company that are literally being bottlenecked and held back by the fact that the priority has always been set on this cyclical nature of we need money to make a really cool game, so we need to make a really pretty spaceship. But then we have to release a patch to the public with that ship in it, which prevents the developers from making the game because they can't just spend time making a feature. It has to be polished enough to be good enough to be in the game and playable for people. It can't just sit in a gray box state. It can't just sit in a I guess in what a typical alpha state would be during a game's development. It has to be in this semi-playable state, and it's just always gets in the way. So they always have to do the patch to sell the ship, so they could do the development, and then it just constantly hinders them over and over and over again. It's so blatantly obvious.
Most extreme version of both the pros and the cons of crowdfunding in gaming. It cuts both ways. Star Citizen is as stunning and ambitious as it is late. And for the people who are running it, who are all too aware of their massive financial burn rate, I think that money cannot be counted on forever. Because if 2021 to 2022 is a nice growth, but then 23 to 24 is actually flat or maybe a loss, then you may start to think, oh dear, this thing has peaked and it's going to go down. And if that's what you fear, laying off 100 to 150 people sure does make sense. Hence, of course, Squadron 42. It's a standalone single-player game that could...
That's what they did, right? For a while ago, they laid off a bunch of people, like early or late last year.
The universe is it's hard to communicate to people what it is. They think it might be an alpha or a beta. They don't know if it's got progression. They don't really know how it works. And why would you invest your time into an MMO-like experience that's on a test server? That just makes no sense to people. But Squadron 42, that is a full game experience. People can buy it, download it, play it, have their mind blown, and in doing so, learn most of the skills that they would need to navigate the persistent universe and become...
I mean, in a very, very minute or just a different way. I mean, why was a game like WoW so successful? It simplified a lot of the ridiculous MMO mechanics of Ultima Online and EverQuest, right? But it also took a universe that people loved. I loved Warcraft 1. I loved Warcraft 2. I did not have a computer that could play Warcraft 3. So I never really played Warcraft 3. But it allowed you to live in a universe that you already were somewhat familiar with. you becoming familiar. This is why the point I'm trying to make here is Squadron 42 has to be really successful in the way that he explained it. But even more so, it has to draw you into the world of Star Citizen and to the world that you want to live in this universe. You have to kind of fall in love with the ships or the planets or the places or the aliens or the people, and then or the stories. And then if you get to live in that universe and be your own person, oh, that's going to sell you on a game like Star Citizen, right? So not only do they need the financial gains, they have investors, by the way, for this game, not just like private or public backing for it. Not only do they need to pay their investors and make a ton of money off of this game in general, but they need to solidify players into wanting to be in this, to create a universe. They're saying they're creating a universe in Star Citizen, but in reality, Squadron 42 is what builds that, is what actually creates that universe in our head, or it latches us onto it, right? As gamers, is the single player campaign can do that, and then you can live in that world in the multiplayer campaign and be your own person living in that world. That's the idea.
The source of recurring revenue. That, in my opinion, is their gambit here.
I feel like they're on borrowed time. I mean, they've always been on borrowed time.
18 days of crunch is nothing compared to 14 years of development, but the perfect demo, the demo that proves the haters wrong and says that the game is real, well, that is going to be worth something a lot more to them. You can only tell skeptics so much. Seeing is believing, and live crashes aside, that demo looks outstanding. And it likely looks outstanding because they felt they had no other option. With revenue potentially on the downslide and releases a little bit off, they need a bigger...
I think the only people that are going to be ultra mega hyper critical of that demo are people that are just way too involved in the project. Like, we're going to see the issues, but I think people on the outside are going to be like, whoa, that game looks pretty cool. Right? Now, I do think the lack of... It moved a bit slow, right? I think it could have drawn people in a little bit better, but I think like my community and people that are just so ingrained in the Star Citizen day to day, that that demo may not have hit you as hard as it might hit somebody who's on the outside. But guess who matters? We're already in. We're going to play it or buy it or whatever. It's the people on the outside. Are they going to be intrigued by this game? And I think the demo shows that.
Event. They need fresh blood because they don't earn money from regular video game selling. They earn money by backers, by selling spaceships. But you've got a problem. If your community is stagnant, who are you going to sell spaceships to once all of your current spaceship fans have bought their fill of spaceships? They need more people, and that's why they were willing to damage one of the foundations of their business to make this demo happen. It could be special. I hope it is special. It is a game that I want to play, a vision that I hope is real, but it's not one that you should pre-order on a whim. And it makes me wonder, whose whales
is really well balanced?
Money? The Star Citizen whales or the League of Legends whales, especially?
Probably League. I mean, does League of Legends have the option to spend $48,000 on something? It's probably Star Citizen whales.
With their hot new gacha system, which you can learn about in the next video.
All right. But that's my first time reacting to a Bellular video, and yeah, I think his takes on this were pretty well balanced. I saw a couple people were like, I don't like him and stuff like that. Okay, that's cool. But if you listen to the words he's saying around Star Citizen, I think it was really well balanced on the being critical, showing the game development flaws, while also clearly being a fan and wanting it to be successful. I think he hit the mark really well there, and yeah, I hope that resonates with the company a little bit, maybe, and something better can happen. But I do think he hit the nail on the head. They felt they had to do it. Squadron 42 has to be a success, or I don't think we get Star Citizen. That's just my feelings.